Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the debate with me, Mohammed SHAFIQ, exclusively here on Iqra TV. Wherever you are watching this around the world, a very warm welcome. Today we talk about, is Sharia law compatible with the UK justice system? That is the topic, and we've got a diverse range of speakers who will guide you through the debate and the issues. Let me introduce them to you. Amra Bone, she's currently the only female Sharia Council panelist in Europe. She served on the Sharia Council at Birmingham Central Mosque for 8 years, and she's taught at schools and universities, as well as been involved in a range of interfaith work, both in the United Kingdom and around the world. Amra, assalamu alaikum, welcome to the programme.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Adam Deen is the Head of Outreach and Senior Researcher at the Quilliam Foundation, which is an anti-extremism think tank. Adam, assalamu alaikum, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're also joined by Salman Butt. He's the editor of Islam 21C Muslim blog. Assalamu alaikum, Salman.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm also joined by the Honourable Sheikh Abu Usama as well, who's the Imam and Sheikh at the Birmingham Green Lane Mosque. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Thank you. And I'm also joined by my two co-panelists, the beautiful ones on the both sides of me. Yes, I was going to say that. I've got out that one. Lauren Booth, who has a distinguished career in broadcasting and journalism. Assalamu alaikum, welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
And last but not least, Dawood PIDCOCK, also known as David. Assalamu alaikum. I think your record speaks for itself. Let's start with you. Amra. Is Sharia law that we practice compatible with British law?
Absolutely. What I do in the Sharia Council at Birmingham Central Mosque is to enable people to live a life of peace and justice. And the British law wants people to live, again, a life of equality and justice. So I don't see any problem at all, because we are not working as parallel courts. We are working within the law of the land, which is often misunderstood. And we largely deal with people who want to live in peace in their hearts, in the sight of God. Some of the people that come to us have not had their marriages registered, and they have no recourse to the civil courts. So the Sharia Council is the only place where they can go and have their marriage dissolved. Now, some may say, well, we should have all the marriages registered, and so everybody could go to the civil court. But the situation we have today is that, you know, we've got hundreds and thousands of marriages out there that are not registered for many, many reasons. Some people are totally ignorant of the fact that their Islamic marriage contract is not valid in the law. And since the marriage contract has the permission or the consent of the two parties, they have two witnesses, and so on, and they sort of think that would be regarded as valid in the law. So what we're doing is, in fact, helping people to move on with their lives rather than have these conflicts within them.
Okay, Adam, would you say that Sharia law is compatible with British law?
Well, before answering that question, I would say that it opens up further questions of, for example, whose Sharia law, whose interpretation, which school of opinion, which school of thought. But in the question, there's an assumption. And the assumption is that we recognise that the British legal system does adhere to justice. So that's kind of half the battle won, because one of the greatest challenges that we have within sort of Islamic discourse is to recognise that one can derive ethics outside of the sources, outside of the scripture. So within that question, there seems to be some sort of positive ground covered. But ultimately, I think it's really down to, you know, whose interpretation. If we have an interpretation which is very, let's say, Puritan, very literalistic, if you have an interpretation that is one that doesn't understand the Quran to be a book of values, and one that sort of focuses more on the laws, the particulars, divorced from its sort of context, then there will be problems. And there are many examples that we can bring about.
For our viewers, international viewers, just give us an example of where it's...
Well, I would say the usual example is freedom of religion. for example. There is a classical opinion that is anyone who leaves their religion should be killed. Now, this is obviously completely strikes at the heart of justice and the British legal system, if you like. There are laws concerning blasphemy laws. These are, again, strike at the heart of our British legal system and what we sort of pertain to be justice. So these are examples which are at odds with the British legal system. And also, the problem there, I for one don't believe that Islam supports the killing of apostates. I do not believe that we should kill people that ridicule or mock the Prophet. And I have my own theological reasons which we can explore. But there are those that have an interpretation of Islam that do hold on to these views, and they're not compatible.
Doreen.
I'm just interested, let's go back to the question, is Sharia law compatible with UK laws? Sharia law was not created to fit within the changing confines of governmental law. It is an eternal law. That's the first thing to recognise. And secondly, can the people who love Sharia and define themselves as Muslims live in a foreign land, have their practices respected and obey the law? Well, that clearly the answer is yes, because we do it every day, despite what the Quranic stance is on certain practices of human beings, whether that is, as all the Abrahamic faiths regarding homosexuality, for example. Nobody's killing, thanks be to God, homosexuals on the streets. Nobody in the UK is looking to kill apostates on the streets. We're living happy, comfortable lives, and we're just rubbing along gently together. So I think it's not the right question, perhaps.
Okay, David?
The idea that we have justice in the courts in this land is absurd. If you've attended the courts that I've attended, with so many people being deprived of their property on forged documents that go through the legal system, it's a total absurdity. And at least I can say that I have about 4,000 cases that I've attended, and more recently we've had some success. But the legal system here is entirely corrupt. Islam, you're shaking your head. Give me. I'll ask you for the evidence. I can give you the chapter and verse on this. But no, we have the closest thing to Islamic law in the sense of the application is European law, the Civil Code of Napoleon, which is 94% based on the fiqh of Imam Malik. When Napoleon adopted that for Europe, this is.
I want you to just pause on that thing, because that what you just introduced is what we're going to be talking about after the break. So we'll come back to that. Sheikh Abu Sama, is Sharia compatible? Can sit side by side by British law?
There are some questions that arise and they present themselves where the answer is not a clear yes or no. It's the detailed answer. So clearly, when the Prophet came and he was in Mecca and they opposed him, there were things about their society that were compliant with Islam. Islam is not 100% against any system on the face of the earth. There are always going to be parallels that are going to be accepted in Islam. But as my sister Laura said, clearly there are things in the law in the UK that are diametrically opposed to what Allah has revealed and what has been legislated and with what the Prophet has brought, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is so crystal clear that for there to be any ambiguity in a person's mind concerning that is a bit of a concern. So it's a detailed issue. There are some parallels between the two where the Islamic law and the British law, they don't conflict, but there are many areas where there is a conflict. No doubt about that.
And what do you do when there is a conflict?
Therein lies...
Do you disobey the British law?
No. I think what we have to do, and again, that's another answer that has its details. It depends on what is actually going on. But what we can say is...
So if it doesn't affect your fundamental beliefs and your fundamental right to practice your faith, you would kind of pause it.
The individual who knows his religion without being extremely literal and without being extremely closed in on himself, he can exist in any situation. Again, in Mecca, at the Kaaba, there were idols erected all along the Kaaba. The Prophet didn't touch those idols one bit while he remained in Mecca for 13 years. He didn't touch them. Although he used to go to the Kaaba, he used to make tawaf around the Kaaba, and those idols were present. Many things, and that's shirk, that's disbelief, that's polytheism, but he allowed it because at that time he was in a position where he couldn't change it. So if a Muslim finds himself in a situation where he's being prevented from practicing some aspect of his deen, then he has to be able to weigh, and it depends on what's going on.
Salman, what would you say about that question?
The important thing for us, I mean, at Islam 21C, that we're focused on is especially post-war on terror, you have an entire generation of young Muslims growing up just absorbing the stereotypes about their own identity. And as a result, they have a very debilitating inferiority complex, which causes them to judge Islam according to whatever, by historical accident, so to speak, whatever country they happen to be born and raised in. And it's when you start doing that, is when it moves away from a genuine conversation to a hegemonic discourse. That, we're going to use this, Western post-European Enlightenment standard and judge your identity, judge your views, your practices, your beliefs, and so forth. And that is fundamentally a very important problem we have to get over as a community. We've made a lot of strides post colonialism, and there are movements to deconstruct those systems embedded into our minds. But ultimately it's a very long process of trying to purify ourselves, so to speak, of the baggage of the inferiority complex.
Amra?
Right. What we do, in the Sharia Council, is largely dealing with marriage and divorce. We're not really talking about blasphemy laws or talking about, other aspects. We're not talking about criminal law. We're dealing with real issues that people have in their lives, and that is to do with marriage and divorce. It's personal law that's being practiced, and that is being practiced within the law of the land. So in that sense, when I said earlier that the Sharia is compatible, within the confines of personal law, when we have women whose husbands have abandoned them for 3 to 5 to 10 years, and they're on their own, where do they go? They cannot go to civil courts. They do not have access to civil courts. What do? Now, as a Muslim community, it's our duty to help those in need. And that was a reason why the Sharia councils were first set up, to help women particularly, and largely women. But now we do have men as well approaching us who are also in similar circumstances when they've had issues.
But your opponents would argue that your type of Sharia councils are anti-women.
Well, that's absolutely...
if you compare it to the British system, where you have equality under the eyes of law, so male and female, yet in Islamic law, people would argue that that isn't the case. What would you say?
No, that's false, in fact. We treat men and women equally when they come to the Sharia Council. Now, as Deen said earlier about who interprets it. Now, we do not confine ourselves to one school of law. We have people coming from all schools of jurisprudence, whether they're Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, or Shia even. We have people from all different backgrounds who come to us, see as people who would help them resolve their affairs. And of course they trust us. That's why they come to us. And so what I want to say is that the thing that we're largely dealing with is aspects that regarding marriage and divorce, which work within the law of the land. Now, the one point that I'd like to make is that as Muslims, we must keep to our contracts. That's a very Quranic teaching, that we must fulfill our contracts. So as British citizens, we have agreed to fulfill those contracts. But as the brother said over there, there are times, there are tensions, and then people have to deal with those and do their best in that situation. But as Muslims, we have agreed to live according to the law of the land. And so what we try to do concerning marriage and divorce, we try.
Adam, so you talked about apostasy, you talked about blasphemy, so that's the two types of in your interpretation, Sharia law that you take away? What else would you take away? What else would you change?
I think one of the big problems that I have is the way in which we understand scripture and the way that we apply it. And in terms of, and also we must state, we're not just talking about Sharia courts, we're talking about Sharia law, which is quite a broad topic. But in terms of, for example, within this discussion here that we're having, inheritance, within your conversations that you have, you must be dealing with these kind of issues. If someone's a literalist, they will give a greater share to the male, and the brother. And I think in a sort of modern context, I think that shouldn't necessarily be the case. I think it should be case by case. I mean, what would you say?
I agree that it should be case by case. And
just pause there, because I want to get to the bottom, because we've got a lot of guests here, and I want to control the debate if possible. Adam, so what other aspects of Sharia law would you take away or change? So inheritance is another one. Anything else?
Well, I'm sure we can talk about lots of things, but just coming back to the comment that was made earlier.
By David?
By Brother David, Sheikh David, that the foundation is British society, British law is fundamentally corrupt.
Now, as it's become, and as it's practiced here, is totally contrary to what we've been led to believe.
Okay.
And it's against common law.
I do think that's a gross generalisation, and it kind of smells of sort of anti-West type of kind of sentiments. Yeah, I think the same type of mentality that says that Islam is inherently barbaric and is intolerant is the same type of mentality that says things like that, and we have to be really careful. Yeah, I would have to state that. I think we need to put things into sort of context. We can say that fundamentally that the British system is based on justice, but there are errors within that system. Like when we look at,
often in error, never in doubt. That's what they believe.
Can I just ask you on that, Adam? So you're saying that Sharia law isn't based on justice?
No. On the contrary, of course it's based on justice, but it's not justice determined by the scripture itself. It appeals to a justice outside of the scripture that we can all recognise. Hence, the British system is just.
Lauren?
I don't know about...
We've got a Muslim community here who want to stay in touch with their Islamic identity, ensure that their actions, their personal actions, family actions are compatible with Islamic law, and go to Sharia Council, go to the ulama and get guidance on that. But then at the same time are aware of their civic responsibilities under British law. It's a difficult balancing act.
So I was going, originally I asked, is it the right question? I think the question to ask is, can the British government allow Muslims to have their own scripture and live in a pluralistic society that they are telling the world that they export? The Jews have their own council, and they live by their laws, and as people of faith they follow their faith. That's fine in this country. Can Muslims be allowed to do that? That's what we need to be exploring.
You don't think Muslims have been allowed to do that?
I think that there are certain groups paid for by the government who are charged with trying to change the scriptures because, well, I would name the Quilliam Foundation, who have received £700,000 from central government in order to try to change the Muslim faith and to cast doubt and...
Let Adam respond, because
that's a major charge there, but could you give me an example?
I just want to say that money has come from central government because money
from the government doesn't follow. They want to change the religion. So give me an example how we try to change the religion.
No, I think all of the questions that you raise, you've just listed the ways in which you want to question the scriptures. So that is your agenda.
But give me a specific example. You know, Lauren can speak for herself. Give me a specific example where we have asked to change the
inheritance.
You've just given that.
You mentioned inheritance.
Okay.
You also talked about, if we can talk about, I just really don't want to get into the debate about.
There's a big charge now.
There is, and I want you to, and I want you to respond to that, because I think you've got the right to respond, Adam, because your
organisation Foundation hasn't been funded by the government for 4 years. But putting that aside, you know, we can talk about all that all day long. But you made quite a strong statement. You said the Quilliam Foundation is about changing the religion and the scripture. And I've asked you, give me an example.
But I think he's just given the examples. You've just listed the things that you find problematic. So
you find it problematic that we say that that we shouldn't kill apostates, that we shouldn't kill people that ridicule the Prophet.
But
You find that problematic?
Which British Muslims are killing apostates? Which British Muslims are doing the issues about killing people under blasphemy laws?
That's a separate issue of how Muslims behave, and we shouldn't confuse the two. What the scriptures say and how Muslims interpret it and live are two separate things. I don't believe that Muslims are going to go around killing people, but
Just
because of that.
answer
But
that
the point is that
Can you answer that allegation? That
to
you've
change
taken
to say
money from the
someone
government?
to say someone is changing the religion is kufr, and to say that in passing shouldn't be just.
I'm only going off the back of what you said.
But I've asked you, where have we asked to change the religion, and you can't give an answer.
Let's pause there, please, everyone. We'll take a break. When we come back, I'm sure we'll explore these issues in a bit more details. Join us on the other side of this. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to the debate with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on Iqra TV, where we're talking about Sharia law being compatible with the UK justice system. Just answer that. What aspects, a criticism that people make of people who want to change Sharia law or want to, stop Sharia law in this country, what's your approach on this issue?
Well, it goes back to the inferiority complex I mentioned. Okay, so we have a lot of stereotypical kind of caricatures of what Sharia law actually means, or what actually is, or even individual rulings and injunctions.
So the chopping of the heads, the killing for apostasy.
I'll take the example of the oft-repeated kind of women get less than men in inheritance. It's actually, if you just say this to someone, do you think women should get less? Do you think women should get less? Obviously, it's going to create some kind of manufactured tension. But if you explain the situation, even from the traditional point of view, that it's brother and sister, the brother gets twice the share of the sister, but there are many examples where women get a higher share than men in different types of relationships. So just these types of
So it varies, as Adam was saying. You actually agree. Agree. It varies from case to case.
No. But the point is, nobody ever said.
So there's a point of agreement there.
No, but nobody ever said in explaining Sharia law, however quote unquote literal they are, that men get more than women. Full stop. There's nuance to it, which is, I believe, deliberately excluded from these discussions.
Imam, let's ask you, when you have somebody come to you with these sort of personal issues, that they want relationship advice or the marriage is finishing, what sort of advice do you give to people?
Going to give advice based upon the reality of their situation. Now, obviously, the first thing that a Muslim is going to look towards is the legislation that's divine. A number of verses of the Quran, not one, not two, and they're not generic. They're very specific, and they have a lot of detail behind them. And they mention the same thing in different ways. It's not befitting for a believing man or a believing woman, if Allah's messenger decided an affair, to have any say-so in that issue. Another ayah says, Allah is the one who creates and He chooses as He likes, and it's not for them to have any choice other than that. So that's the description of the Muslim. When you look at the wide and the rich differences that exist in the jurisprudence of Islam, then that's another issue, but there's really no problem. So if a Muslim comes to me with his issue, there's always going to be an answer that you can address the issue from the Kitab, from the Sunnah, that there's no conflict and there's no complication. As for the Muslim who comes in and he says, I don't want to be judged by the religion, I want to be judged by something other than that, then I think that statement and that understanding is one in which that person is not really enjoying the highest state of al-Iman. I don't say outright he's a non-Muslim, he's outside of the fold of Islam. He could be, but he may not be. But the full Muslim with full Iman is the one who is totally and absolutely okay and comfortable with, let me be judged by the book of Allah and the Sunnah. The hypocrites in the Quran, on the other hand, Allah mentioned about them, if the ruling is in their favor, they come willingly. But if the ruling is not in their favor, they want something else. They want to go somewhere else. But the believer is not like that. He's going to stand up for justice, whether it's against himself, his parents, or his closest relative.
So there is, Sharia law has become a very loaded term, it's become very politicized in British political debate or national life. And some people have just switched off, because as soon as it's a Sharia law, they think beheadings, they think killings, they think chopping of the hands, and they don't realise there are other aspects of Sharia law which is, same as European and British civic law.
Well, exactly, but when people swear on the Bible, I mean, the Bible talks about not permitting a wizard to live. I mean, the whole idea is that Islam should be judged differently from the people of the book. Is absurd, because if you look at the criteria in the Bible, it's probably far more severe in many respects than how we view Sharia. But it's a diversion. This is to demonize Muslims, because the threat to the system here particularly is, and I've noticed it for the past 40 years, when you start to talk about the real issues, about riba, about the system being built on this issue, then that's what they're afraid of. This system here, whether it's Cameron, Clegg or any of the others, are terrified of the fact they may lose the control over the city, and it will be...
Are you seriously suggesting that the people who oppose Sharia law are bigots and hate Islam?
Well, they hate the truth, and that is the big problem. The system that we see from 1694, the problem for the world globally stems from here, and the system that we have. Magna Carta and all these things change nothing. We change common law, which is very much compatible with Sharia. So I think we're looking down the wrong end of the telescope here.
Lauren, you've lived a life as a non-Muslim, and now you're living a life as a Muslim.
Yes.
When that question comes up, and I asked you and you had to think about it and think, actually, can I word this in a different sort of way? Do you think you can successfully have that commitment to Sharia and also be committed to British civic law and criminal law?
I think that's a really nice question to address. I think I, like all other Muslims, I'm trying to live my life according to Allah's law and within the remits of what is expected as a citizen of the United Kingdom. And so far I have found absolutely no quandaries about it. I think what is difficult for our community is when, for example, the second marriage question, whereby it's preferred culturally here that men have mistresses and girlfriends, than that they perhaps share a life with 2 women or up to 4, but give each rights that are very, very seriously taken. I find that culturally problematic for my heart, because I think women should, have those rights Islamically and have that choice. I find the mistress idea problematic, but we allow everybody to live as they live. Why is the government, and followed by the right-wing press, trying to make it unlivable for Muslims here when we're stable and we're a good community? That's what I'd like.
Can I ask you, Adam Deen, Sheikh Osama Hassan, who's a leading imam in this country, he's part of the Quilliam Foundation, he talked about in Ramadan last year, about shortening the fast, because there were 19-hour fast here in the UK, and you should cut it down and maybe finish at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. Isn't that something which you're changing, which conflicts with the Sharia law?
And for all his credit, Sheikh Osama's, it's actually not just his opinion, it's an Azhari opinion. So that's quite important. Because of this kind of, fear of changing the religion, we seem to sort of look over the fact that there are diverse opinions about these issues. That's not necessarily changing the religion, because in its essence the fasting is there. And upon that, even on that discussion about fasting, there are opinions that say that we should fast according to the time in Makkah. See, what we have to understand is the reference and the reasoning behind such fatwa will suggest if it's legitimate or not, because the reasoning behind it is using ease, and also making it applicable to the number of hours the Prophet actually fasted during his prophethood during that time. So
wasn't it just sunrise to sunset?
Well, what do you do with areas where that doesn't happen according to plan?
You go by the newest...
But that's textual criticism. So, which is interesting, because earlier we were talking about,
there's modifications within Sharia for those sort of people, but not in somewhere like Britain where there is a sunrise and there is a sunset.
We have to, yes, but then
so it's quite clear, then, isn't it?
Well, not. I mean, I can't speak for Sheikh Osama's opinion, but
no. But you asked for an example of where your organisation wanted to change elements of the Sharia law, Islamic law. I've given you one.
Does that mean Azhar, one of the the greatest authorities, second to Medina University, are also being accused here of changing the religion. I think we need to be a bit grown up.
Are you
a
sure
bit
the
mature.
fatwa was?
Yeah,
with
it's an
reference
Azhari
to
opinion.
UK?
Yeah.
And
It's an Azhari opinion. According to
with reference to the United
Times, it is this actual opinion. Sheikh Salah also, who's recently joined, is one also who's actually studying Azhar, also supports the opinion as well. So we have to be careful. You see, because of this kind of fear of changing the religion, we seem to overlook these nuances, and we immediately have this kind of immature, knee-jerk reaction. Oh my God, it's changing the religion. Like, this is a classic example in this conversation. Earlier, I was accused of changing the religion because of inheritance. Then later on, Salman here said, well, actually, yeah, there are case-by-case fatwas on this issue.
We didn't actually agree on that. Yes.
Okay.
I
think I was trying to get you to agree.
But that's why I mentioned brother and sister, not man and woman.
No. According to you believe it by brother and sister. There are case-by-case
gentlemen, let me take this back to
the sister doesn't get more than the man.
Gentlemen, let me take this back.
You don't believe in case-by-case.
Adam, let me chair this debate. Sheikh, let me go to the Sheikh. Sheikh, let's just take the issue of Ramadan. Adam's given you an opinion, which is that you can, as some Azhari scholars, a minority of Azhari scholars, and a number of Sheikh Usama Hassan, for example, has said you can reduce the length of the fast, but the other people are saying, well, it's sunrise to sunset. How do you balance those two different opinions within Islam?
When there's a legitimate point of differences that come as a result of the text or how to look at a situation, and you have classical, renowned scholars having that difference of opinion, then we embrace it and we look at all of that and we're mature.
When you say classical ulama scholars, who are you talking about?
You have to always be careful about taking from the fringes of society. And in Islam, we've always had people who are on the fringes. People who are outside of what is considered to be normal. So on one hand, a person may criticize the literalists. And there's a fact that sometimes a person who takes the text literally, it can be criticized because the text wasn't meant to be taken literal in that particular case scenario. But then the other problem is the other extreme, the one who is so liberal that you come up with rulings and regulations that have no real precedence. They were given by people who are not known. They were given by people who, the way they came to that conclusion is, what they call in Arabic is the issue has been arrived at, and it's not, the two case scenarios are not the same. They're not.
Could I just come in here?
Yeah, sure, please.
Look, I'm finding this slightly hilarious, that we are becoming agitated by an Islamic opinion that I feel is legitimate, although I fast all the way through, because I could do it, it's not a problem for me. I find it hilarious that we're agitated by shortening the fast by 4 hours or so, and yet when it comes to things like killing people for changing their religion, we say, no, according to the text it must be true because of this hadith. I just find it hilarious. I mean, this symbolizes the epitome of the problem that we've lost the humanistic value of Islam. And I call this kind of an ethical disorientation. What Muslims are up in arms about are sort of trivial, mundane things, like dancing on a video and putting it on YouTube. But then when we hear about people being killed for sticking up for minorities because of some blasphemy law, we seem to think that that's fine, or we should stay silent and we should be faithful to such absurdities. This is just underpins the fact that we're having this conversation within the same context, that we ignore vital issues.
I just wanted to comment on, when we're talking about Sharia law, are we sort of meaning that there is only one law? That's what's unfortunate, in fact, that when people talk about Sharia, they somehow think it's sort of codified law. A lot of non-Muslims tend to think that it's codified law. Now, the Quran is very categorical about that it's a book of guidance, and there is a guidance being given throughout the Quran.
So what would you say to me? There are many people amongst British people, non-Muslims in this country, who have misconceptions about Sharia law. What are those misconceptions?
I mean, to give you an issue that we have to deal with quite regularly within the Sharia Council in Birmingham, is that the people tend to think, I mean, even when we have men coming into the council and they think that they're the only one that can divorce, and if they do not give their permission, divorce won't take place. Now, in the Sharia Council, I'm not the only one. There we have people on the panel. Sometimes there's 4 altogether, sometimes 3, and we don't normally have less than 3 people, so that we always come to a unanimous agreement.
And some of them are scholars.
Sorry?
Some of them are scholars?
We're all scholars.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not allowed to be on the panel.
If you're not a scholar.
If you don't have knowledge, obviously Allah knows best. What we do is we try and help people. And this issue of divorce, that a man can say divorce 3 times, the word divorce, and there is a divorce, right? Now there is a discussion on that.
I just want to pause you there, because I've reached the time where I have to take our final break. I promised you when we come back, we'll come straight back to you and talk about these issues. We're talking about Sharia law, whether it's compatible with British law. Join us on the other side of this. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to the debate with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on Iqra TV. Just before the break, you were talking about, men and divorce and misconceptions around what is acceptable, what isn't. Just briefly touch on that before we move on.
A lot of people that come to us have this view that a man can say divorce 3 times and that's it, finished. A woman has no choice. So we have to constantly remind them that a man can initiate the divorce, a woman can initiate the divorce, or they can go to the Sharia Council to have it dissolved. Now, when a man initiates the divorce, when he utters the word divorce, I divorce you, it's not an immediate divorce, because within the next 3 months, they can get back together, and there has to be no remarriage. And if that 3 menstrual cycles, that period elapses, and they do decide that they want to go ahead, a man has no right over any of the gifts that he's given her. So it's not as straightforward as it's portrayed in the media. Now, if a woman initiates the divorce, there's an aspect of gift that a man has given her. Now, if it's not his fault, and maybe he gave her £1 million, there are issues involved with that. I just one more point that I wanted to make,
please,
which was the difference of jurisprudence in terms of 3 divorces. If a man utters 3 divorces in one go, then if the marriage is finished, we have people coming to us and they say, look, we want to be together, but we've gone to all the scholars and they've told us, no, we're finished. Right. Now we have to weigh up that the 3 divorces uttered in one sitting, should we take it as 1 divorce or 3 divorces? Because there's the schools of law that say it is 3 divorces.
I'm really pushing you. I'm really sorry.
I think it's a very important point, because we're not
talking here about marriage and Islamic law. We're just talking about the overall thing.
But that is a point of jurisprudence.
I appreciate that.
And the variations in understanding.
I look forward to...
Which is why it's not one law, if you see what I mean.
I know. I look forward to welcoming you back, and we can have a debate about marriage and Islamic law. I promise you. It's a great topic to have, because I've had personal experience with family members who've done just that, and it's not very nice for the women involved. Sheikh, are you agitated by what Adam Deen said before the break?
No, Kalla. I was explaining that I didn't witness anyone who was agitated. I definitely exclude myself from that equation, but those people who had something to say about that was the opinion that they didn't agree with. So I don't think it was fair for him to dismiss it and to say that it was funny. I don't know the exact superlative that he used. No, he said it was hilarious. I think that was very dismissive and disrespectful, because the personality of the Muslim is, when it came to that issue of killing someone who apostates, that is not something picked out of the air. So if someone comes and says, they say, no, I don't agree with that, and then the Muslim, he disagrees with that point of view, he has every right to air out his opinion, even more so than the one who came with that statement, because where did that come from? So there are texts there. So I just wanted to make that point, that there were 2 different situations. Murder, taking someone's life, spilling blood, is heavier than the scales in those 4 hours. But that's not the context of just spilling blood. This is the spilling blood based upon what the Prophet said.
Is there a sense that a lot of the negativity about Sharia law possibly could do with the way some Muslims are applying Sharia law in a negative way?
I mean, I can't exclude it. It could be. You can't really prove a negative like that, but I've never seen that to be really the motivation behind all of the propaganda you have against so-called Sharia law.
Not what ISIS does in the name of Islam.
That's what we're talking about here, but it's not in the name of Islam. Just
we're talking about British media, let's say.
We're talking about Sharia law is compatible with UK law. Let's stick on that.
Yeah. So I mean, the problem I see here, one of the main problems is this banding around the terms like humanistic and justice, for example, as though they're just simple kind of concoctions that everyone agrees on. Justice,
that's not my case.
Justice, something like justice or law, is a storied enterprise. It has a beginning, it has a story from a particular cultural and social structure and lens. And what we see often now is people who argue about minute points in the whole legislature, let's say, of Sharia, are arguing from a point of view of justice, from one interpretation of justice, of one civilization and so forth, one point in time, and subjecting the other to that standard. I mean, the funny thing is, if we were having this very conversation 100 years ago, there would be a much bigger disparity between Sharia and British notions of justice. Okay, it would have been just, it would have been, fair and just under British law, under our culture here, for a woman to be deprived from going to university. Okay, in Oxford University's first woman was admitted for a degree in 1920, for example. It would have been just, according to Britain, according to our culture.
The difference is that we can recognise that to be. We can recognise that now, looking back, retrospectively, we can say that was not just.
No, but how do you know your definition of justice now is better than then?
I mean, if we're going to
this is a myth.
No, if we're going to have a
come on, let's keep
conversation.
Come on, Adam, let's keep Adam, let's keep the insults to yourself and answer the question. Let's be civil.
That's not an insult.
It
is.
What
discussion? You're deliberately.
No, I don't take it as an insult.
And I don't want that. I don't want. Can I stop both of you, please?
Yeah.
Can I just ask you kindly to respect each other? You both got the right to be here, and we welcome you here. And let's just not make.
I don't feel offended.
I think so. What's kind of what's been alluded here is this type of sort of subjectivism that our understanding of ethics are kind of social constructs. That's quite a dangerous view, and that's not a view that's traditionally upheld. If you start saying that, our kind of ideas, objectivism is something that traditional scholarship upholds to, that when Allah says, I command you to do justice, He is appealing to something that we can all understand, whether you're Muslim or not. If you deny that point, then it becomes absurd, because then what you're saying is Allah orders you to do what Allah orders you to do, which becomes absurd. So Allah is appealing to something outside of the scripture. There's something's universal.
Just briefly, Salman,
it's a very good example of a straw man. It's precisely what I did not say. What I did say was, if you go by what it's apparent from your demeanor today, is taking British notions of justice.
No, not necessarily.
If it is that, then if we go into history, obviously people at a time that they're doing something, they're going to think of themselves as just. This is the point we need to get your head around. Nobody sets out saying, I want to be unjust. I'm not talking about Muslims. Because if you got a Muslim who's an Orthodox Muslim, at any point in history, he would be the same.
If it's okay, I'm going to park it there and just move it to the ladies. Lauren, there is a sense, I asked the question of Salman as well, that sometimes some of the actions, allegedly, of Muslims in application of Sharia leads to a negative opinion of Sharia within wider society. Is that a fair reflection?
Everybody who behaves in a way that is abhorrent is going to bring a problem to their community. That's recognised, that's human fitrah. So that's it. So it's an obvious question, isn't it?
Can you just
pick up that question as well, please?
The question was,
in terms of people who are misapplying Sharia law gives a negative image in wider society.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look, I'm not denying that there are anti-Muslim sentiments, that there are elements within our society that are pushing...
Particularly within the humanist and atheist communities.
Well, there are some individuals
who describe Sharia law as a barbarian law.
Well, I mean...
happens to support your organisation, but we won't get into that.
There's a Sufi tradition that is to, concentrate on yourself before you start talking about other people. So if non-Muslims and atheists have a negative view of Islam, we should probably look at our own understanding of Islam first and say, well, maybe we contributed to that, which is a very good sort of ethical precept. Of course that there is an agenda out there by individuals, but we shouldn't get carried away and avoid a virtue, which is critical introspection. Muslims should always look at themselves and analyze where things are going wrong. Now, see, again, this type of sort of apologetics that I just heard from Salman is problematic. I'll explain why. Because the same argument ISIS could use and say, well, what you seem to be injustice now, maybe in 100 years' time, you would actually go, actually, that's perfectly fine. So the point is that you can't appeal to this kind of subjective notions of justice.
I forgot, David.
No, and who created ISIS?
See,
who finances ISIS today?
Well, that's a sort of more of a political conversation that we have. It's kind of not related to...
but you're talking about ISIS in relation... Cui bono, who benefits from it?
Okay.
Who benefits?
I'm sure we'll come on to this, guys, we'll come on to this, but let's go back to Sharia law. I know. Let's go back to the issue at hand, which is Sharia law. What do Muslims need to do to better explain Sharia law?
Practice it.
Which aspects?
All of it, because when you point the finger, as you said, there are always three pointing back at you. So the problem is the Muslims have become, as Rasulullah said, Zabad al-Bahr. You become like the foam on the sea, widespread, a mile wide, but maybe 3/1000 of an inch thick. So the Muslims are the problem, because as soon as you apply Islam to yourself, you will see the results. So but you joined the club. You're now involved in mortgage, riba, all the things that and therefore the punishment, as it happened with Bani Israel, they were punished twice, the Persians and the Romans, and this is where the Muslims are now. They're being punished because they are not applying things to themselves. And it must be, when you're in a hole of your own making, the first thing to do is stop digging and then read the instructions.
Sheikh, there are elements of Sharia law in terms of how we engage with non-Muslims, how we engage with our neighbours, all those civic aspects of our life, which people don't read in the newspapers, don't know about Islam. For example, a number of Muslim organisations went to help out in the floods, where I come from, in the northwest of the country, giving out food and helping. Isn't that an element of Sharia law as well?
No doubt, obviously. But we can't expect that the mainstream media are going to highlight that, and we shouldn't wait for that. What we should just continue to do is to be diligent and to be busy with the job at hand. That is, people learning the religion, practicing the religion based upon their abilities and just staying in their lane. I think one of the big problems today is the level of confusion that we have. There is this thing. Everybody at this table is responsible for learning how to read Surah Al-Fatiha correctly. We've been commanded to do that. Allah said, read the Quran correctly with tartil. Rattil Quran, tartil, read it correctly. But if the noon is sakin, which is part of reading the Quran correctly, noon is sakin. If it were to fall on the head of, any particular given Muslim, he wouldn't know that this is noon as sakin. And yet the person puts his foot in an arena that is, very serious. I mean, it's a big arena. But this is what we're dealing with today, the confusion that our community is faced with. It's a big issue. These things that we're talking about, we can just ask Allah for His rahmah, for some guidance.
How do you resolve these issues, Lauren? I mean, very interesting debate.
I think it's really important that we have a kind of unified, positive voice, and that we don't have elements within our community, just dissecting our faith as if we're at the table for other people to try and destroy what we love and what we observe, especially when it's actually in the United Kingdom not harming anybody. Let it live and let live. And I just want to know, Adam, are you my brother in Islam?
Of course. What kind of question is that?
Okay, that's okay. Are you okay? I want to know if you're okay.
In what sense?
Just, are you okay?
Well, I had a bit of upset stomach this morning. But
okay.
Yeah.
And what do you want? And what does Quilliam want? What do you want from us?
We've come back to the Quilliam question again. But
okay, what do you want? What do you, Adam, want when you come and you have questions?
I'm just conscious, and I'd really love to have, and I'm sure Adam will be very happy to come back and have a debate on Quilliam in a future debate, and we could talk all about Quilliam, but I just want to take it back, and let's start where we started, which was about Sharia law and Sharia councils. And how do you, I mean, you do a lot of work, very valuable work in Birmingham, and I know people who've accessed your services are very happy. How do you then go out and do that outreach amongst the non-Muslims about changing minds about Sharia law?
Actually, we have a lot of non-Muslims coming to us. Almost every at every Sharia council meeting we have some non-Muslims there wanting to either film us or to do some research, write books. In fact, there was a book written called Blaming Islam by a professor from Washington. And when he visited our council, he said to us, the women are in charge here. He says that what is portrayed, I mean, we have other women who are administrators and help us. What he was saying, what's portrayed out there isn't what we're doing. We have other non-Muslims who've come and told us, you're the best council we've seen. It is providing an example. There was a lady who says, who asked us this question, what gives you the authority to do what you do? I said, we don't give ourselves the authority. It's the people who give us the authority. They come to us because they want to live by, whatever Allah wants them to, according to the Sharia. So they come to us. They trust us to make those decisions.
They trust you to make those decisions. Adam, your final comments, please, sir.
Yeah, I just think that, if we sincerely care for the truth and we could care about the image of Islam and reconnecting to its true message, then we should have employ critical introspection and actually look at ourselves and the ideas that we hold and scrutinize them and speak openly like this and have frank and honest conversations, and then inshallah the truth will prevail.
Lauren?
Inshallah.
Wow. I think the whole series, that's the very shortest answer I've seen from you. Thank you so much, Lauren there. Dawood?
I have to agree. I'm lost for words once again.
Okay. Thank you. Sheikh?
I just think the message that should resonate with us is the importance of balance and everyone just staying in the middle. Not being of the people, those people who apologize, they acquiesce, they're not happy with what Allah has revealed in His religion. See it as being appropriate, compatible, able, and not being from the other extreme people. The other individuals who are closed-minded, then the individuals who are intolerant. We just have to be balanced. Al-Islam should be uppermost, as the Prophet said. Al-Islam is uppermost, and nothing should go over Al-Islam.
Salman, final word to you, sir.
Well, I agree with Adam, and the Sheikh. We have to be introspective, and I would say the two things I take away is try to cure ignorance in our community and try to heal the inferiority complex that we have inherited over centuries of colonization, physical, economic, political and intellectual colonization. I think Sharia, as an enterprise, it has a lot to offer human beings. It has a lot to offer the wider public, and we should be confident in that. And it's ultimately an empowerment for the people. If you see the colonization process in India, for example, one of the first things they attacked were Sharia systems, because it's hard to colonize a people if there's no authoritarian power structure. So localized Sharia councils are the way forward, I think.
Well, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. I know it's been a fascinating and interesting and sometimes heated discussion, but that's all good. Dialogue and discussion and debate is very, very good. But from me, Mohammed Shafiq, if you want to share your thoughts about the programme, you can get in touch with us on social media. But from everybody here in London, United Kingdom, the whole Iqra TV team, thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.